Let's see if you are hearing me. All right. Let's see if you are hearing me. Okay, good. The mic check worked. All right, so tonight I want to look on the 2022 January paper. Let us see if it is that we will be able to add the solution for this. Not sure why it is that my screen is twitching. Here it is that we are at question 1. And question 1 is asking for us to define the term verification and validation. Verification and validation are two ways by which we check for errors. Let's start there. The difference between the two is that one checks for errors before processing takes place and one checks for errors after processing takes place. Okay, so for verification, let me go down. When verification, we are going to check and ensure that the data that was entered after processing is correct. So verification would be a means by which we are going to check for errors after processing would have taken place. Right? We have two ways of verifying our data or verification methods. So you can proofread, right? So you have two persons going over what was entered by the user, or you have double data entry where two persons enter the same information and then it is cross-referenced to see if there are any errors. That's verification. Validation now, that is when we are going to check for errors before processing takes place. Now, for validation, you can think about creating a form online. Let's say you are signing up for a particular website. Now, once you sign up for the website, it's going to ask you to enter certain information. Right. When you're signing, sorry about that. When you sign up for a website, it may ask you for you to enter your name, your email address as example, your age, right? Now, for your email address, part of the validation check that will be done is to ensure that the email address that you entered is valid. How it is that they're going to do that, right? They check based on the database that exists, and if your email address exists, then you will move on. Right. So that is why validation takes place before processing. If your email address, there's no match with it, you will not be able to move on to the next stage. So as recap, verification checks for errors before after processing takes place. Validation checks for errors before processing takes place. So for verification, you will be able to move on to step 2, but for validation, you would not be able to move on to step 2 if it is that the information you entered is not correct. All right, moving on now to B. B says outline the function of each of the following validation methods. Give one example for each method. So we have range check, we have um, inconsistency check, and it asks for you to give an example. Range check, as the name suggests, means that you're checking that the data entered is within a particular range. Let's say, for instance, you asked users, let's say For you to have an email address, you have to be of a certain age, let's say 12 and above. So when you enter your age or when you enter your date of birth, you will get a red check mark which says that based on your age, you would not qualify for an email. And that would be the example. So another example, let's say you're entering the months of the year. So the months of the year would, the range would be 1 to 12. So if it is that you enter 13, then it would be invalid, and as such it will not be able to process the data. All right. When we speak of inconsistency check, we are checking for two fields. So we may ask the user, let's say for instance, to enter their date of birth as example, and we ask them to enter their age. Now, quite often we will find where persons will enter their age, but probably they're thinking about the day, as in today's current day, and they enter the day as their date of birth. Now, the system will be able to check and say, all right, then these two data, they are not consistent, which would make it now inconsistent. So once you think about inconsistency check, there are going to be two fields, and the two fields must match. Example, date of birth and age. All right, so moving on now to 1C. Hi, Arnels. I'll have to look into that because we don't do paper threes, so I didn't look much into the paper threes any at all before it was a written exam. But I will look into it, and then I will place a comment. So after I post the live, what you can do is to leave a comment in the chat, or you can leave your email address, and then once it is that I make the necessary checks, then I'll respond to it with that information for you. All right, so for C, so C requires us to use a spreadsheet. So it says the spreadsheet below shows the runs scored, balls faced, and the strike rate for each player who contributed to the total score of 199 runs for the Warriors cricket team in the T20 game. The strike rate of each player is calculated as run score divided by balls faced multiplied by 100. The percentage of the total runs scored for each player is calculated as the runs scored by that player divided by the total runs scored. That was a mouthful. So here it is that we have our spreadsheet. So it says now a formula was inserted in D3. Let us identify D3. That is right here. Let me use my highlighter. All right, so that would be D3 to calculate the strike rate of the player, Alfonso, who scored 18 runs, that's the 18 here, and faced 28 balls. The formula was copied to the range of cells D4 to D10. That's right here, right? So it says now, write the formula that was inserted in cell D3. Let's go back to look on the formula for strike rate. Strike rate for each player is calculated as runs divided by balls faced times 100. So the formula here let's write. So ensure that you write the equal sign first. So that's that part. And then now this would be AB. So it would be E3 divided by C3 close bracket divided by, times 100. That was the formula. All right. And 2 now. 2 says outline what accounted for the result displayed in D9 after copying the formula from D3 to the range. All right. So here now at D9, we have a blank cell, right? And the formula that we had would have been this cell divided by this. Now we know for math, you can't divide by 0. And if the cell is blank, it would mean 0. Hence the error that is right here, hashtag div /0 exclamation. So it is saying that the Excel cannot divide by 0. Hence the formula did not work here. All right. All right. So for D now, D says state how each of the following types of data is displayed within a cell in an electronic spreadsheet. So this is asking when you are typing in spreadsheet and you enter a number, what happens to it? How is it aligned? When you enter text, whether straight text or alphanumeric, what happens? When you enter data in a spreadsheet, numbers are automatically aligned to the left, while alphanumeric or text data is automatically aligned to the right. So for number data, these data, they are automatically aligned to the left, alphanumeric automatically aligned to the right. All right, so for E now, E says write the formula inserted in E3 before it was copied to cells E4, E10. So let us scroll back up. So we're looking for the formula for E3. So here we are in E3. Let us go back to my highlighter. So that is E3. So what was the formula for E3? So it says here that the percentage of total runs scored for each player is calculated as the runs scored by that player divided by the total runs scored. Total runs scored for each player is calculated as, okay. So we want to know what percentage right here. So our formula is going to be B3, because this is the total run scored by the player Alfonso, and we are going to divide it by the total score for everyone, which is in D10. But because it is that we don't want D10 to change, we have to make that absolute. So this is going to be the formula. Let me write it here. So it is the equal sign, and we're going to have B3 divided by, and once it is that we are going to make a cell absolute, it would be $B $10. And it is not case sensitive, so if you write it in uppercase or lowercase, it is quite fine. And that would have given you your 2 marks for E. For F, it says state the type of cell referencing used in the formula in each of the following cells. So if you can recall, it is asking now what is the difference between this formula and this formula. So one uses absolute referencing. The one for D3 uses relative cell addressing, which means that it is going to make the data relative to the cells to the right or left, depending on the formula that is being used. But E3 use absolute cell referencing. Absolute cell referencing would mean now that when it is that the formula is copied down to the other cells, it does not change. And that is why we put the $sign in this formula here. So that would have been the response there for those two. Now for F3 says explain why the type of cell reference stated in F2 is used in E3. And I think I would have explained that before. When it is that we are copying down the formula, we don't want B10, to change to B11, then B12, because those cells did not have any data in them. So we use absolute cell referencing because when it is that the formula is copied down, we want a portion of that formula to remain the same. So we want B3 to change to B4 because we're going to move on to our next player. But the total runs, we don't want that part to change, and that is why we use the absolute referencing. So from that example, you should be able to put that into your own words. The question one was pretty simple. You would have gotten your 20 marks from that. So for question two says state two methods that can be used to prevent members of the public from having physical access to stored information. So we're looking on data security here. How can you protect the public from having your information? You lock it. That's one way, right? You are going to use your passwords, right? Some people use just a PIN. Some persons use passwords. Some persons use their biometrics. So this is where you're going to have your face scan, your fingerprint scan, your retina scan, depending on whatever it is that you're going to use. For organizations that are going to store your personal information, they will have their firewall, which is going to detect if someone is trying to break into their system and they're trying to hack it. So that is one aspect. You will have different kind of security measures. Let's say there's a physical room that this information is being housed in. They will use their padlocks to lock the door. They can use vaults. They can use a security guard. So any of these methods can be utilized in this for this answer. And notice it says just to state, so there's no description needed. For B now, it says suggest two software methods that can be used to prevent unauthorized staff from accessing sensitive data on a network. Now, as it relates to an organization, one of the things that they can do is to limit who would have access to the data. So there's some prevention aspect. So let's say, for instance, managers would have access to everything, and then persons who work below managers, they will have access to a piece of the data. So they can implement restrictions to the data so that persons will not be able to see it. You can also encrypt the data, which means that even if they access it, they don't have the encryption key, so they will not be able to identify what it is. Um, you can also lock the file. By locking the file, you can use passwords which only specific persons will have, so you know, and you can implement as well as a tracker, which is going to state exactly who logged in, what file it is that they accessed, and then it will be able to send a report to the relevant person stating that, such and such persons would have accessed this data. So for C says state two ways in which integrity of data can be destroyed. So here we're looking on um, when persons will intentionally destroy data, or when it is that your data can be unintentionally destroyed. So unintentionally, you will always hear about natural disasters. Um, there's a flood, come damage your data, water. There's a fire, damage your data. Earthquake can damage your data. So natural disasters can affect that. Human error as well, where it is that persons can intentionally go in and delete the data, corrupt the data, have the data showing incorrect data, or persons can unintentionally probably delete a file by mistake. So these are some ways by which data can be destroyed. For D now, we're looking on a database, right? So it says Syndra has created a web-enabled database application to allow her friends from the university to enter their own data from a web page. The database consists of the following two tables: contacts and degrees. Data entered in the gender field must be M or for male and F for female. All date of birth entered must be prior to the 30th of June 2000. So we have table 1 contacts database, and here it is that we are showing what it is that the persons would have entered in the contacts table. Then now we have the degrees table, right? And the different degrees that were entered. So it says identify the most appropriate field types for each of the following fields. So we have birth date. Let us look at the table to identify what was entered for birthday. So based on this aspect, we can go through. For ID number, we're seeing that numbers were used, so number would be the data type. For first name and last name, text, you can leave it at text, short text, long text, because there are some systems, depending on the version of database you're using, you will not see short or long text. For date of birth, um, you can use date and time. Based on what was entered here, it would be date and time as a data type. For gender, gender can also be text, and you can format the cell where it only accepts one character. Then now for married, married where you have yes or no, this can be Boolean. For phone, because the dash is there, right? And please pay keen attention to this part. Because the dash is in the phone number, it is no longer numbers, it is now alphanumeric. So phone number would be short text or text. And degree now, degree would be solely numbers. Let's go back to the table. So for date of birth, I'm going to have date slash time. That is how it is entered. For married, married was yes or no. So you would use yes or no because that is the field name that's there, the data type, sorry. For degree, the person's entered, let's look back. Did it say the customer table? Did it say, right? All right, so here now, when we look on the contacts table, and I'm hoping, and I think this is something CXE can look into, it says the most appropriate field type for each of the following fields. But here it is that we have degree program. Okay, so they didn't have degree there. So the right here, they only have degree, and degree would just be numbers. And for gender, I would select short text as well. And as I said, you can have short text or you can just have text by itself. Whichever one you use, that is completely okay. But for gender, the only thing you would do is to restrict the size. All right. State what is meant by the term primary key in a database. Anytime you say the word primary key as it relates to the database, think about unique. Think about none other. So the purpose of the primary key is to identify or to assign unique identifiers to a record. And we know that a record is a whole row of information relating to one person, place, or thing. Another name for a record is a tuple, Tuple. So that is the purpose of your primary key. All right, so identify two primary keys from the database tables. So we're looking on the two tables here, and we're to identify a primary key. So for the contacts, right, we are seeing where the ID number is unique. Currently, first name is unique as well as last name. Currently as well, date of birth. We're seeing where the data repeat for gender, for married as well, phone number. Now, phone number could use, let's say for instance, one phone number per person, depending. We could not use degree because we're seeing where degree repeats. So we have 30 here, we have 30 here. And that is a key part with your primary key. The data cannot repeat. So the best one for the contacts table would be ID. And for the degrees table, then the degree code would work here. All right, so let's record that. So identify two primary keys from page 9. So it would be ID from the tables. So ID, and the ID would be for the customer table. And then I would say the ID. Let me look back on the actual term. So that's the degree code. And degree code for the degree table. All right. All right, so that's our answer there. And for 4 is asking what is the role of a foreign key in a database. So the foreign key is used to link two tables together. So basically what it is a column that exists in one table that is not necessarily the primary key in that table. So looking on the two tables here, the code would be a foreign key. So it's a foreign key in the contacts table, but it is a primary key, the degree code, in the degrees table. So for this example, degree in the contacts would be an example of a foreign key. So if it is that we are supposed to create a relationship with contacts and degree, we would have to use the degree code to do that because the data match. So that is why the foreign key is used to link two tables together. All right, so that is IV. All right, so for 5 says state the fields from the database tables mentioned on page 9 that can be used to establish each of the following foreign keys. So as I said before, we have to use what is identical. So in the contacts table, degree was there, but in the degrees table, the name of the field was degree code. So that is that part of the database where you would go to database tools, select relationship, click on the field name that is identical in both tables, drag it to each other and then release it. And then you'd see a line coming up between the two tables to say that now they are linked. So for this part here, it says describe the relationship that is established between table 1 and table 2. I'm hoping that this does not throw you off because I have to be going back and forth. All right, so but I have to show you this part now. So we have, let me go through. There are different types of relationships in database. You have a one-to-one, where one data in one table matches only one data in another table. You have one to many, where one data in a table will match many data in a next table. So that's a one to many. Or you can have a many to many relationship where many data in one table will match many data in a next table. So here now, looking on these two tables, and we are going to key in on degree and degree code. So for degree, we're seeing 0, 1, 0, 100, 30, 50, 30 again, right? So what it means is that as the table expand, as persons add their information, you might find a lot of persons who have a bachelor's in economics. You may have a lot of persons who have bachelor's in computer science, a BA in history, right? But in the degrees table, the degree code will not repeat because, as we said before, that is the primary key. So it cannot repeat. So that is not going to repeat. So that is a one relationship. But because it can appear many times in the customer table, it is a one to many relationship. So the answer for this would be a one to many relationship. Hello, hi. All right, moving on. So we're now finished with question 2. I think this paper thus far is an easy paper. So for question 3, and there should be 5 questions. For question 3 now, Roger, a new employee in the information technology department of a supermarket, notices that discounts are being calculated manually. Roger asks for a pseudocode to be generated that would handle 25% discount of merchandise totals. It says now write a pseudocode for the algorithm that will initialize the variables, prompt the user to input the price on quantity of the items, calculate the discount amount of 25% of the total if the total is greater than $1,800. And then we're supposed to output the discount amount. So we know we have a way where it is that we think that, you know, this is supposed to be done or that is supposed to be done. But time is of the essence in exam. So therefore, read carefully in terms of what it is that they want you to do and do just that. How I write algorithms may differ from how it is that you were taught. Nonetheless, once it is that you have certain components in there, you will get your mark, such as declaration. You have to declare your variables. So looking on the question now, it asks us to ask the user to input the price and quantity of items. So we're going to have a variable for price. I'm going to have P, then I'm going to have QTY for quantity, right? Then it says where to calculate the discount amount. So I'm going to have DISC for discount, right? Um, right. And it asks us to initialize. All right, so let us start our algorithm. And here we're going to indent away. Indenting is good practice. So it's a initialize the variables. So we can initialize P equals 0, comma, QTY equal 0, comma, and discount DISC equal 0. Total, we did not do total, but we can add total here, even though it was not asked for. We're going to add it. Put equal 0. All right, so we finished with the initializing. Now it is that we can prompt the user to enter the price and quantity. All right, so once we are prompting, you can use the word display, you can use the word print, you can use the word write, you can use the word output, whichever one you use, that is fine. I'm going to use the word write, bracket, quotation. And you can have one prompt statement where you're asking the user to enter both, or you can split it up where it is that you have two different prompt statements. I'm going to use two. So enter the price of the item. And now I am going to read price. And I have to use but the same variable name that I had at the top, which is just P. Okay. Let me copy this. Let's see if I can copy it. I have to write it over. All right, so write bracket, quotation, enter the quantity, which is QT. All right, I have QT, why not have QT? Let me fix this one because we're going with QT. Enter the quantity of items, close quotation, close bracket. Now I'm going to read. So I'm now going to have read QT. All right, so now we need to go into calculation. So we're going to calculate discount, right? I remember that discount is 25%. So discount, DISC, that's what I had before. I'm not sure why it is that my system is bugging out at this time. All right. So we're going to have discount is set at 25%. All right. But the question did say that, let's go back. It says calculate the discount amount at 25% of the total if the total is greater than 1800. So I'm actually wrong here because I'm supposed to be actually calculating total. The TOT equal, how do we calculate the total? It is the price times the quantity. So we're going to have P times QT, right? Now we're going to check to see if the total is greater than 1800. So we're going to have if, bracket, what is our variable that we're checking? We're checking total. What is it we're checking it for? We're checking to see if it is greater than 1800. So greater than sign, 1800, close bracket, have our word then. So if it is greater than 1800 now, we would need to calculate discount. So discount, which is DISC, would be equal now to tot times 0.25. Not writing 25%. Once it is that you're doing algorithm or program writing, you have to turn that percentage value into a decimal. All right, so there's no other condition, so we're going to end our if here. Once it is that the if, think about the if as a door. If you open the door, you must close the door, and that is your end if. So after which now the question says that we are to output the discounted amount. That's the only thing we're supposed to do. So we're going to have right bracket discounted amount is close quotation, comma. I'll put the variable name here, which is DISC, close bracket. And in the true fashion, once it is that you have start, you must have stop. All right. And that would be our algorithm. I am not sure why my system seems to be bugging out tonight. See, now it is telling me it's not responding. Hopefully it doesn't close and then I lose all this data. Let's see. All right, so it seems not to be responding. So let me close it. All right, wait for program to respond. Let's give it a minute. And if it doesn't come up, then I close it, restart it, and then we will continue. The good thing about it is that it's being recorded. So I wanted to zoom out to show you the full algorithm. But all right, that doesn't seem to be working now. All right, let us close the program. All right, let me share screen again. Ooh, okay. So I recovered a part of it. So I'm just going to make the necessary. I'm just going to complete it and then show you guys again. Right, so this is where we are. We had completed this. Part. All right. Let me take out discount. We had calculated total equal P times QTY. That's what we had, QT, sorry. And then we had our if statement. So we had if TOT was greater than 1800, close bracket, then let's indent away from our then. Then we calculated discount, so DISC equal tot times 0.25. There was no other condition, so then we ended the if, and then we outputted discount. So we had right, open bracket, open quotations, and we had discounted amount is close quotation, comma, DISC, close bracket, and we said that once it is that we have a start, we must have stop. All right, so that was the algorithm. All right, so let's move on. Let me zoom in back. I'm not going to save the paper, but if it is that you need the blank copy, then what you can do is send me an email. Just put your information in the chat saying that you would like this paper, and then I will send it to you. So B says that Roger has been tasked with reconfiguring the network system for the supermarket, which is expanding. List 3 types of networks. So based on your syllabus, there is LAN, LAN, local area network. There is WLAN, wireless local area network. There is PAN, that is private area network as well. There is MAN, metropolitan area network. There's WAN, wide area network. Any of the 3 from the 5 would have worked here for you to get your 3 marks. It says describe one type of network that would be suitable for effectively managing all the functions of all departments in the supermarket. So right here for 2, it's not necessarily looking for what you would call it, a one size fit all response, right? It will have to do a lot with how it is that you respond to it. So let's say, for instance, you say local area network. Why would you select a local network? Because you can connect. Let's say you can say the supermarket is on one premises. You can, use wire to connect all the different departments so that they can communicate effectively, right? That's one. You can use a wireless area network, wireless local area network, which is a WLAN, and you would explain that based on the fact that you have systems that are in place, you would want departments to communicate using a modem, a router, etc., wirelessly. If it is a large scale supermarket, then you would say probably a MAN, where it is that the warehouse area can communicate with the persons inside the office. So it all goes back to how it is that you would respond or describe this response. But I think a LAN, me personally, LAN, W1, WLAN, or a combination of both would be best to have the supermarket being effectively managed. So if you're using a LAN would be used because, as I said, you can wirelessly connect the machines, the person, the managers, supervisors in the office, they will be able to monitor or manage or see what is happening in real time. All right, C says Roger is considering segregating the users of the network, differentiate between an intranet and an extranet. So the part that remains the same is tranet. That is the same for both. The in and the ex, using context clue. In, internal. So the intranet is a network that connects persons who work within the organization. Extranet, external. It will connect persons who are external of the organization, but they will be given limited access, right? So I am a customer of the supermarket, or I'm a creditor to the supermarket. I sell them goods. So they can create a network where they will be able to go on and they will be able to see my invoice, which is going to state how much money it is I think I owe them. And they will be able just to see that aspect. They will not be able to see how it is that my invoice with another company to see if they're selling me items cheaper, more expensive, etc. They will only be able to see that information that is related to them. So that is C. All right, D now. It says Roger must produce a table showing the cost of the equipment he will need to purchase in order to facilitate the expansion of the network. The table below illustrates a part of the spreadsheet that he produced. All right. All right, so it says write the formula to be inserted in cell D5 to calculate the total cost of the switches. All right. In D, did you say D5? Right. So in cell D5, what would we add here? So if they're purchasing 10 switch at 250, we're going to multiply. So it's not 10 times 250 because if you drag down the formula, it would only show you 2,500 for everyone. So we're using the cells. So it would be equal to B5 times C5. And that's the answer for that part. Let us type it where we're actually supposed to type it. So it's equal B5 times C5. Write the function that would be placed in cell D12 to calculate the average cost. The average cost. All right, good. D12, we're averaging costs. So don't be fooled because we see it in this column. We saw it in column B. We're actually doing it for column C. So we're using the average function. So it would be equal average. It's not shortened like the others. What's the starting cell address? B3. No, sorry, A, B, C. C3 to C9. C3 colon C9. So it's our starting cell address, which is right here, C3, or ending cell address, which would be C9. And that would be the formula. So that is it, C3 and C9. All right, so let's type it where it's actually supposed to go. Please do not forget the equal sign, right? And spell the name of the function correctly. See what I had, so I don't need to write it over. C3 colon C9. And that's your 2 marks. Next, it says Roger's employer wants to have the spreadsheet on page 14 sorted in alphabetical order. List the correct order in the steps that would be required to do this. Now, since the pandemic, persons would be using different applications, Excel, Google Sheets, the others, depending on what you're using, the device you're using. So because of that, I would encourage you to start off questions like these with by using, let's say, so using Microsoft Excel. Right, so we know we can track. So step 1, we would highlight all the data and the labels. Right, that is the first step. Now it says that they want to sort the page in alphabetical order. But it didn't say by what. Right? So let's say we're going to sort it in alphabetical order by items. Now, when it is that you're sorting by the first field, it is pretty easy. You highlight the data and the labels. 2, under the home ribbon. Under the home ribbon, you would select A to Z, right? In other instances, though, when it is that you are not using, you're not sorting by the first field, then you would add the other steps, which would be under the home ribbon, select sort and filter. So you select the arrow there, and I think that is the same thing. Under the home ribbon, select sort and filter, and then A to Z, right? Yeah. There are instances though when after you select sort and filter, you'll have to select custom sort. After you select custom sort, you will select the other columns. That is if you're sorting by column B, column C, column D. Any other field or column other than the first column, you'd have to go to custom sort. Hopefully I did not confuse you with that. All right, so for F, F says, during a staff meeting, management decided that docs were an unnecessary cost. State in the correct order the steps required to delete row 9 from the spreadsheet on page 14. Again, we start it using Microsoft. Whichever one you are using, select that. You write that. If it is Google Sheets you have been practicing, using Google Sheets, right? You have been using, I think, is it Sheets? If you have been using Sheets, you write using Sheets. Whatever application you're using, then you write that at the top, right? So step 1 is to highlight the entire row. Highlight the entire row. And normally once you're selecting the entire row, you just click on the number. All right, so by clicking or selecting the number 9. Once you click on 9 or you select 9, it's going to highlight the entire row, right? Step 2, you can press delete on the keyboard, or you can right click on the mouse and select delete. Delete the entire row. And that would be your steps for that part of the question. And that should give you your 2 marks. All right, so that was 25 marks for question 3. And we are now at question 4. So we're near the end. Kiva has just graduated from college with a degree in computer science. She decides to set up a home business offering programming services. List 4 main hardware devices that Kiva will use to facilitate her business. All right. So we know that once it is that we are doing programming, we're going to need a system that is fast enough to manage the programming language. That's one. It must be able to facilitate the traffic, right, in terms of the number of persons that she will be facilitating. So she would need all the components of a computer system. She'd need a keyboard. She would need a mouse, right? She would need the keyboard, mouse, a monitor, right? You would need a systems unit, a laptop. But because they said the 4 main components of a computer system, so there's storage, that's one. So let's say a hard drive. Then, so that's storage. There is the processor, right, which is going to be the systems unit, everything inside there. Then you have your monitor so that you can output. Then you have the two input units, which would be your keyboard and your mouse. So you list from there. It says now, Kiva has to ensure that her devices are equipped with sufficient storage. Describe the function of any two features of a hard drive or hard disk. So we know that when we look on flash drives, CDs, floppy disk, all these things, your hard drive is going to provide you with more storage, right? The storage capacity of your hard drive is going to be much more than any other device. So that is one of the key functions there. Right. That is one of the feature of a hard drive. The next aspect of it is that if it is that she's using a portable hard drive, it can be moved around with. You can take it wherever it is that you are going, right? If it is that she sets up a physical system where it is that there's a monitor, systems unit on a desk and it's not really portable, where it is that she can move it from point A to point B, right? Then the hard drive she would be able to move. So the hard drive would make it portable where it is that she would have her information on the go. All right. Or if you don't have it on the go, you can use it in a next system as well. Let's say you want your hard drive, but you're upgrading to a next system. You can always remove it. B. Kiva is aware of some of the threats to a computer system which may impact the operations of the system. State one reason for using passwords. We use password when we don't want persons to access our data. So passwords will be used to prevent unauthorized access from individuals that may want to access your data, pass it on as their own, that may want to damage your data. Anything that you want to add to it is that makes sense is okay. Give one example of an effective password. So a password must they're saying the longer it is, the better, right? Because we don't want persons to be using their parents' name, their pet, their date of birth, anything that is predictable. And even if it is that you're using something like that, you are going to incorporate the following. You're going to have a capital letter, you're going to incorporate a number, a special character, um, and you're going to make it at least 8 digits in length, right? So you would write something along that line that would have all those components: capital letter, lowercase letter, special character, number, and it's at least 8 digits long. All right, so Kiva writes the pseudocode below for her client. Study the pseudocode carefully to answer the following question that follows. All right, state the purpose of the pseudocode. So it has set max equals 0. The arrow is same thing as equal. Right, enter integer, read the number that the user enter. We check in to see if the number is not equal to 0. And if it is not equal to 0, then it should check now if num is greater than max. If it is not greater than max, we're going to assign max to num. And then we're to write enter integer or 0 to stop read now. All right, so here now we're just finding the maximum number. The purpose of this algorithm is to find the highest number from the range of numbers that were given. That is it. So it's going to be a loop where it is that each time the users will be asked to enter a number. Once the number is not 0, then it's going to check if it is greater than the previous value that was there for max. And if it is greater, then it will assign it to max. And then when it is that the user enters 0 or stop, then it will output what is the maximum value. So the purpose of the pseudocode is to ascertain and identify the maximum number. or highest number. All right, name the constructs that are used in the algorithm. So we have three constructs. We have sequence, we have selection, and we have repetition. So we are seeing sequence from line 1 to 11, right? Where it is that we're seeing input, processing, and output. So sequence was used. Selection would be if statement, and we're seeing an if statement at line 5 to line 7. That's your selection construct. Iteration is at line 4 and ends at line 10. So all three constructs were used, which would be selection, sequence, and iteration. State the line that represents initialization. Initialization is giving a variable a starting value, and we're seeing that at line 1, right? Where it says set max arrow 0. We said the arrow is the same thing as the equal sign. State the purpose of the second output statement. All right. So looking on this now, here it is that we have an output statement at number 2, and then we have a second output statement at number 8. Now, as it relates to the while loop, right, notice that this aspect where it is asking the user to enter a number is outside of the loop, right? Because it is outside of the loop, when it is that it checks the first number that the user enters, if it is not equal to max or if it is equal to max, after that the algorithm would stop and then output. It would not loop because there's no other value. So this line 8 is going to ensure that there's a looping structure, there's a continuous structure where it is that one value is entered and next value is entered, and it's going to continue like that until the user enters 0. So the second output that is used to ensure that the loop continues to loop or iterate, or that the loop continues. All right, next. State the name of the variables that were used in the pseudocode. 2 marks. All right, let's go back. Max, that is 1. Num, that is 2. Only 2 variables were used. Max and num. Max is storing the maximum value. Num is storing the value that the user entered. So we only have 2 variables there. All right, next one. It says, identify the 2 lines in the pseudocode on page 17 that demonstrates rational operation. All right, rational operation. Let's look. All right, so for our rational operation, we're looking on condition, where it is that something will have to happen before it moves on to the next stage, and that would be line 4 and line 5. So if the user enters a value that is not equal or is equal to 0, then the loop will stop. It will just output max, right? So it's going to check. Then now for line 5, it's going to check again to see if num is greater than max, right? So for both line 4 and 5, those would be rational. Rational, relational, or rational. Relational is the same thing as conditional. All right. Kiva, having written the pseudocode in B, wants to use flowchart techniques to show the structure of the algorithm. All right, let me see if this is the last question. All right, this is the last question. So for us to do this part, I'm going to have to screenshot this because I don't have all the diagrams in what you call this now? In this. I don't have all the diagrams in Adobe Reader. So I'm going to copy this, paste it in Word, and then show you how it is that the flowchart will look from Microsoft Word. All right. All right, I'm going to screen share Word now. All right, let's see where that is. Hi, Grim. All right, new share. All right, let's go, let's go, let's go. All right, this part. Okay. I'm going to put this on a new page. Let's see if I can expand this where it is that you'll be able to see. All right, and then I show it on this side. Now, regardless of the fact, there it is there. I was going to say that there's no start or stop. All right, so we use oval for start. All right, so let me add my text for this one. So that is start. All right, it may be a little bit fine, but I have to keep it like that until. Line 1 is where we're initializing max, right? So for line 1, what we're going to use is a rectangle. We use rectangles for calculations, right? All right. So this is where max, and you don't have to write it as is. I'm just going to write max equals 0. But if you write it the same way, it is also fine, right? Let me get a connector. Connectors are important, so please ensure that you have your arrows, and your arrows must have an arrowhead, right? So we have start, we have our rectangle, max equals 0. The next part is where we're asking the user to enter an integer and we're reading, right? That is a parallelogram, and I call that the lean rectangle. So for this, you can write both statements where you have write, enter integer, read num, or you can just have read num. Whichever one, it will work and you will get your mark, right? But if you want for safekeeping to write both of them in there, that is quite fine. Or you can have input num. I'm just going to have read num here, and then go back, and I'm going to add my arrow, which is going to connect this and this. All right, good. The next part after that is my while statement. So for my while statement, I'm going to use a decision box, and my decision box is a diamond. Now, when it is that you use the diamond, you can write inside of the diamond a question, or you can write back what you have there. So we're going to have is, let me use what is on the screen, while num is not equal to 0. I'm going to write back that, and let us use our connector again. But coming from this now, we need to show true or false, right? So we need two lines coming from this, which is going to say, what should happen if this is true? What should happen if this is false? And for these lines, please ensure that you label them, right? So you're going to write on it yes, you're going to write on it no, you're going to write on it true, you're going to write on it false, or you can just use F. I'm going to put yes here. And I'm going to put no here. Right. So is num equal to 0, right? No, it's not. Right. Yes, it is. Right. So in this case, if it is not equal to 0, yes, what should happen? Right. That is what we're going to check. So inside that now we have a next diamond. So I'm not going to draw it back. I'm just going to copy this diamond and I'm going to put it right under this one. Because immediately after the decision, I have a selection. That is why I'm going to put that here. All right. So for right here now, I'm going to write the if statement. So here I'll have if num is, what was that now? Greater than max. We're going to do the same thing now for this. We need a true and we need a false. So I'm going to copy these. Copy this line. I'm going to copy this line. Right. And let me copy the labels as well. And then once it is that you have a diamond, whether you're using if, you're using while, you're using for, you have to label that with yes or no, right? Good. Now for yes, right? What happened inside our loop? We're going to inside our if statement. Now it says now that if num is greater than max, then max equal num. So we're going to use a rectangle again. So I'm not going to draw. Let me copy this. So right here, I'm going to have num max equal num instead of 0. All right. There was no else. So what are we going to do? We are going to connect these two. Right? So coming from no, we join a line, draw a line, draw a next line coming from this shape here. And I'm going to try and put it on one level. After I put it on one level now, I'm going to meet them up in the middle. I'm going to see how best it is that I can meet them in the middle. So coming from here to here, then the next one from here to here. All right. Then now I'm going to use what I call the connector, which is a small circle. So we're connecting this to make it into one thing. So that is like a endif. That is what I keep saying to my students. It's like a endif, even though we don't use endifs um in flowchart. So that's the endif. So outside of the endif now, we're seeing where it is going to ask the user to enter num again, right? So right here, I can enter that part where it is that I'm going to read num. But what I'm going to do instead is to show the whole looping is to point it back to this section, right? So how do I do that? Coming from this connector, I'm going to go this way. And when you're drawing it, you want to ensure that your lines are not all over the place, right? Because if they're all over the place, then it causes confusion. Right here. So I point it back to this part so that it shows that all of this is just going to continue looping until, right? So when the user enters 0, what happens? This we're going to now show on the no or false side what happens outside of the loop. So right here we're seeing where it says that we're to output max. So let me copy this parallelogram. Copy you. And I'm going to put you right here. Make it a little bit smaller. Right, and put you right here. Good. And draw an arrow to connect you from here to here. Right. But instead of read num, what I'm going to have is to print output, write it back like how you see it there, whichever one is fine. So I'm going to print max. All right. So after I print max, then in the same way like you have an algorithm, once you have start, you must have stop. So I'm going to have my oval, and my oval is going to have stop. Because in truth and in fact, the algorithm is not going to stop until the user enters stop or 0, which means that it is outside of the loop and num is equal to 0. Right? All right. So that would be the flow chart, right? And that would have given you how many marks for the flow chart now? I think my document has crashed again. All right. So that would have been the flow chart. I hope that this video will greatly assist you with your upcoming exams. I'm going to do the June 2021 paper more than likely next week, so you can look out for that video. Whatever resources I have, I am willing to share it. All you need to do is to put your information in the comment section. Please like, subscribe, and share the videos so that it may help others as well. So I now bid you good night, wishing for you tomorrow a wonderful rest of day. Can I get your email? Sure. My email is normally in the description section of my videos. But I'm going to place it in the chat and I'll be able to send it to you, Miss, and you'll be able to view it, Mr. Harriet. Or you can send me yours and then I'll be able to send you. I'd be able to send you the. Oh, why does it seem as though the Word document was not being shared? Okay, let me share it now, just in case. All right, so this is the flow chart that we did. I'm not seeing it when I came over to my streaming platform just now, so just in case it wasn't being shared all along. So we had our start to show the start of the algorithm right here. We use rectangle for calculations and assignments. We use parallelogram for prompt statements and read statements. We use diamond for if, while, for. Any of those, you're going to use a diamond. Once it is that you have a diamond, you're supposed to show the true and false aspect. What happens when the condition is true? What happens when the condition is false, right? And normally, once it is that you have a loop, anything that comes outside of the end for, the end while, you are going to put that at the false or no. And always remember that once you have a start, you must have a stop. Right. So we use the diamonds, we labeled our lines, and to show the whole looping, instead of writing back the prompt statement under here, we just bring it back to the original part where it asks the user to enter next number, which would be the same thing, for it to check again to see if the number is not equal to 0. All right. So again, good night. Do have yourself a wonderful day, evening, whenever it is that you do get to watch this video. Thanks for your usual support. I love how it is that the channel has been growing. I really, really, really do appreciate that. All right. Good night.